Hey everyone, how you doing today? As mentioned on the daily financial news, we are very, very lucky to have someone joining us for her weekly series on Mother's Day. Let's welcome Laura Morby to the show, who is a mom, y'all. Give her some props for doing this on Mother's Day. How you doing, Laura?
I'm doing great. One of the
That's
best days of the year for me.
I'm sure every day in your family is just awesome. But yes, you deserve lots of kudos and whatever you want today, breakfast in bed or pacemaking dinner or whatever it is. So I hope you have a wonderful day and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, you know what? We're gonna make this first one a little twist on Mother's Day, and we're gonna talk about how do moms, such as
Mhm.
yourself, really help the next generation kind of be ready to be entrepreneurs, right? When I was growing up, it was very much, at least in my household, was go to school, get a good education, get a good job, make a lot of money. That was kind of the thing. And I think
Right.
we've seen over the last decade or so that that works for some kids, but it
Hmm.
doesn't work for all. And I would darn say it doesn't work for most.
Right.
And that's a big change that I'm very happy we're seeing now that we're celebrating and encouraging entrepreneurship. So I know we talked a
Right.
little bit about that in our opening episode together, but let's dive into that. How can a mom kind of encourage their kids, right, under 18 to even start think about act like entrepreneurs? Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that I think is the biggest thing is to recognize, of course, as all parents know, that no kids are the same.
Mm,
So you're the same parent, but your kids are definitely not the same.
mm.
Sometimes I think that maybe the best way to handle kids is to say, what are you good at? What are you interested in? And see where those can
Oh,
converge. Because sometimes you have, a certain, when you kind of pigeonhole a child, or you have this dream that you want them to fulfill, you want them to be a doctor, a lawyer, and they aren't interested in that, or they're not good at that, they're not drawn to that. Then you kind of, you set yourself up for disappointment, and you set them up to feel like they're disappointing you, which
mm.
is sad. So, sometimes I wish you could do that with every kid and say, here's something that you're interested in, and here's a talent that you have, and maybe I can encourage you to look into this. So, if your kid's like really into computers, maybe get him into some summer coding classes and see if you can kind of spark something that might change the trajectory of his life. But for entrepreneurship specifically, if you feel as though you have a child who is excellent at talking to people, maybe they'd be a great salesperson. Or if they are, um, you know, they have a lemonade stand, or they're selling candy bars at a markup in class, things like that, where you can be like, oh my gosh, I might have an entrepreneur on my hand. And I
Yeah.
think too that there's like this really cool thing that's happening with the internet, is it opens up so many pathways for um, a lot of people to be their own boss and not work a 9 to 5 or be in a cubicle. And it's kind of funny when you meet some of these people that have a successful internet business, and you meet them outside and you're like, oh, you're actually shy, or um, you're not comfortable in a big group of people, where these things that were typically you had to have these skill sets in order to be a successful entrepreneur, you actually don't. So it
Mm.
kind of opens up the world that anybody can own their own business, which is great because you're not capped on your income. Sky's the limit.
Yeah.
And you can kind of create the world and the life that you want, which is really cool. So for our family specifically, my son, I kind of, he's very, I guess the best way to describe him, he's like the perfect child, but he's agreeable. So, when he was younger, he wouldn't get out of bed until you would like tell him to do it, and he would just like sometimes I don't want to ever embarrass him, but I won't say what I was about to say because that actually might embarrass him. But he's 13, so I got to be aware that he's probably going to see some of this.
Yeah.
So he really won't do anything until you tell him to do something. And
Okay.
so I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know how this is going to be for him. And, my first thing, of course, as a mom to a boy is like, oh my gosh, what kind of woman is he going to end up with? He's going to end up with a real battle axe who's going to be telling him what to do because he needs that. But then that's fine. I'm glad he's going to find someone who's going to tell him what to do. But then she's probably not going to want to have like holidays with us and I'm never going to see him on Christmas and just spiral with the crazy mom stuff. Um but I kind of was thinking I'm like he's going to have to be an employee. Like
Oh,
he's going to have someone tell him, there's my beautiful daughter. Oh my gosh, sweetheart. She just woke up out of bed. Hi baby.
hi.
Um
She could come
so
on camera if she wants. I don't know what's going on over there.
oh she's Pace just walked away with
Oh,
her.
oh well. Okay.
Um So I kind of always thought, "Oh my gosh, she's gonna have to be an employee."
Mhm.
And, Pace has kind of, Asher's always been with us for real estate stuff,
Mhm.
and I mentioned before, when kids are little, they say no, and I want candy, I want juice, things like that. But like
Mhm.
his first like full, like fully formed sentence is we were driving around all day long, showing houses, putting on lock boxes, taking photos for listings. And, um, again, agreeable, barely says anything. And it's about 6:30 at night. And I, look back at him and he goes, Mom, how many more houses? And I was like, wow, that's your first full sentence. I'm like, that kind of makes me feel like a bad mom, but all right. But so when for like the first like 5 years after that, when you could be like, hey, what do you want to do? Do you want to build houses like grandpa? Do you want to sell houses like mom? Like, what do you want to do? And he was like, no, no houses. No houses. I don't want.
I don't know
Um,
anything, but I know no houses.
yeah. And then when Pace and I were doing home vestors, Asher actually went to a lot of buy appointments with him.
Hmm.
And because Pace wanted to show him, um, Pace is so caring, and you're going into situations where someone's passed away, or there's a major medical illness, which loss of income. Everyone seemingly who called for home vestors, because home vestors is set up to where your phone rings, you pay for a certain number of leads. You
Hmm.
have a money phone that rings. That's a motivated seller who's reaching out to you,
Mhm.
which makes your close ratio go like way up, sky high, because like they're coming to you and you have that brand behind you. So,
Mhm.
you have that social proof, which makes an easy sale. So, but all those people seemingly had like some major life problem
Yeah,
usually.
they need it out.
Yeah. And so Pace would take Asher. And again, Asher's super agreeable. He'll sit there, super polite. He won't say anything, and he actually pays attention. And, the conversations that came from that made me realize that Asher actually probably does have the opportunity to do that because he is so caring and he's a
Right.
wonderful listener. And he got really into it. And there's a really cool story when, so we got a hold of a guy who his mom had bought him a house, and he was on, he had some health problems, some medical problems. His wife left him, went through a divorce, go down the ticket of stuff that can lead someone to lose their home. So he and his son were still living in the home, and they were so strapped for cash that they weren't paying their power bill. And we're in Arizona, it's the middle of summer. So, it's like 120 outside, and you can
Mm.
imagine how hot it is inside. And so Ash paced, prior to the appointment, we already knew this because I did the intake on the phone. I got the lowdown, like some motivations and what's going on. So he knew what he was walking into. And he took Asher to Walmart to go get $100 gift card and explained why he was doing that on the way to the appointment, explain what was going on. And you don't have to tell Asher, like, hey, don't make a weird face, don't complain. And so he took him there, and, that was a hard appointment.
Mm.
And Pace came home and he told me that Asher was just sitting there, sweat like pouring down his face, bright red cheeks. And so polite, never complained, never said he was hot, was super polite to the gentleman and his son, talked to the son about video games, like actually helped out. And the guy, we ended up buying the house, and the guy actually said how amazing of
Hmm.
a child Asher was. And, he even pointed out, he was like, your son was just sweating in my house. And, you know, but it was interesting, and it opened up this whole world of conversations with Asher. And, pretty much since that time, Asher has said that he wants to get into real estate. And um,
Wow.
I think that there's a space for every person.
Mhm.
And I think Pace's business partner, Cody Barton, is proof of that. Cody is one of the most amazing people I've ever met. He matches Pace in work ethic, but Cody could do away with the buy appointments. Cody could do away with the networking and the schmoozing and all that
Mhm.
stuff. Cody doesn't care about that. But you know what? There is a space for a personality like Cody's to be a part of a dynamic duo and create multiple successful businesses with multiple revenue streams. So I think it's really cool to like look at your children and, definitely, I mean, we look at them and we know their strengths and weaknesses, but also to let them surprise you
Mm.
and to let them make their own choices. I mean, if Asher said he wanted to go join a band and live in Argentina, then, whatever, go for it. I'm happy. But, it's really cool to think that, maybe there could be a part of what we're doing that might change his life. And yeah, it's just super cool. So,
That's
really
awesome.
excited for the next generation.
That is awesome. So I want to go back to a couple of things that because you said so much there, I want to make sure people picked up on. So first off, that story about Asher and Pace going to see that gentleman. So you said earlier that Asher's 13 now.
Yes.
How old was he then? 10, 9,
Oh,
11?
yeah. That was 3 years ago, so he was 10.
He was 10. Wow, that's
Mhm.
amazing. A 10-year-old had the presence to understand what was going on. So shout out Asher and both you and Pace for raising such a kind human beings.
Oh,
That's pretty special.
he was truly born that way, given to
Yeah.
us that way. I always tell Pace, I say, "The kids aren't ours. We're lent them, and
Ah.
someday they'll be gone." And, and truly he came into this world a certain way. And, people always make comments about what a wonderful child he is. And,
Hmm.
of course we parent, but
Yeah.
he truly was just born that way. He's just a great, great little guy.
That's awesome. But I want to go back to how you started this because I don't know that everybody picked up on it. You said something
Mhm.
very, very cool that I don't know that I've heard before, right? And that is, you know what, figure out what your kid is good at, right? Kind of one circle, and then figure out what they like. And it's not always the same and it's not always similar, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
I was curious from a mom's perspective. How early are you looking at that stuff, right? Was Asher, for
Oh,
example, at 4 or 5 different than at 9 or 10, different at 13, or have you seen a progression that kind of all makes sense?
he was the most peaceful baby, which is really similar to how he is now. He was a wild and woolly toddler. And so I was like, "Oh my gosh, where did my sweet boy go?"
Mhm.
And, that only lasted for, like, 6 months, and then you're right, by the time he was 3 or 4, he's pretty much been the same moving
Okay.
forward. Obviously, he's growing and changing, and I'm getting to know him. Sometimes he says stuff. He sent me a couple jokes the other day that he found online, and I was like, "Oh, wow, you have a dark sense of humor," and that actually kinda surprised me because I do too, but I don't share those jokes with him, but, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've, known you your whole life, and here you go surprising me." So, I mean, I'm sure there's gonna be a million more things, especially as we go through teenage years that are
Yeah.
really gonna throw me for a loop. But yeah, he's pretty much been the same person. Some interests come and go, skateboarding or,
Yeah.
Fortnite was the big thing and now it's not. It's not cool, I guess, anymore if you're in 7th grade to play Fortnite. But so I know that, interests come and go, but like his strengths and have been pretty consistent since 3 on.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
The other thing I will share with you, again, my mom watches all my videos. So hi, mom.
Oh,
Hi,
hi, mom.
Yeah. Hi, Dorothy. Um, one of the things I remember growing up, I don't remember a lot. My memory's horrible, but I do remember pulling away from my mom because she reminds me all the time at about 13.
Oh, yeah.
But I came back at like 16 or 17.
Oh,
So
that's sweet. Well, I
yeah.
am I am kind of preparing myself for
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
And,
Just it's
yeah.
natural, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like you have to kinda I always think like when you're a baby, it's all about you. You don't know that the world doesn't revolve around you. And
Yeah.
then, from the time you're probably 3 to 10, you're trying to assimilate into like the family. I hate saying like the tribe thing, like
Hmm.
your vibes dictates your tribe or whatever people say. That kind of
Hmm.
makes me laugh, but truly like more from a scientific standpoint,
Yeah.
we're like a little pack, and
Yeah.
the child has to learn how to assimilate into the tribe of the family. And then, from 13 on, as they pull away, which I'm expecting, it's only natural because they're
Yeah.
trying to assimilate into the larger tribe of junior high, larger tribe of high school, and then
Sure.
thus into like the larger tribe of the world. And so, I do want that for him. So, but, I have to remind myself that it's, scientifically like accurate for this to happen, and I can't get my feelings hurt, but
Yeah. I just
play it
didn't want you to
okay.
be surprised. I'm glad that's not going to happen.
I might get my feelings hurt, but I'll keep it to myself.
There you go, there you go. Well, I wanna go back to that story because again, I think celebrating entrepreneurship is at least it wasn't natural in my family, and maybe
Yeah.
it wasn't yours, right? Because your dad was sort of doing that. So maybe
Mhm.
you have that history to pull from, but I think a lot of parents need to see how they can help that, right? I think your example of, buying candy at Costco and then selling it markup, is a great idea. One time I was buying old junker bikes and cleaning them up and selling them, and just how to encourage that, and then tell the story about, I think you were buying a dumpster or some kind of thing
Oh,
for your son
yeah.
as a business.
Yeah. So we were golfing and we sat down to have a quick little salad after the first nine and front nine, sorry. And one of our friends who is also a construction company owner came over and he said that he had a tractor or a little dump trailer and that he was renting it out on Craigslist. And we were all listening to that. We had Asher with us. And so Asher and Pace got to talking and Pace was like, I'm going to go buy one. That's a
Yeah.
great, that's a great idea. Get started. So Pace went and bought one. And so what we do is it's $90 a day. And then they have to have like a 250 deposit just in case something happens. And so we got Asher set up with his own little Venmo, his own little Craigslist account. And so he's posting his own ads, getting it rented out. He coordinates them picking it up and dropping it off. They have to drop it back off clean because you can imagine what kind of stuff people. So he's
Mhm.
got his little rules set up and he's got his little business cracking. And so it's going to set up not just because like it sounds fun, but sometimes it's not going to be fun for him. He's not going to want to do that. And
Yeah.
so number one, it makes him be aware of his phone ringing. Like
Mhm.
that to me is a big thing.
Sure.
Um, to be available even when you don't want to be. And then he has to be responsible for them picking it up, the coordination, which then makes you think, okay, why don't you set expectations properly and
Mhm.
automate some certain things, like some things that you can utilize in business going forward on so many levels, setting up these like little micro examples of how he can do stuff. And then we're going to involve him in the bookkeeping. And so he can track, this is our first month. So we haven't completed the first month yet.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's going to be really cool and he's super excited and it's a good way for him to make some money, but of course we're going to have him go work with grandpa and stuff and learn how to
Sure.
work with his hands. So he's not above that. But this is really cool to show him how you can make money doing something a little bit more creatively where his friends might go get a job at water and ice or a fast food restaurant,
Mhm.
which still might be a good thing for him for sure. I
Yeah.
know we've talked about Pace and I wanting to buy a Chick-fil-A franchise. You have to work there. So we've talked about like with Asher, like, hey, maybe do you want to like go work at Chick-fil-A for a little bit? Like we
Yeah.
like so definitely not not above anything, but
Yeah.
it's really cool to show him a side of, you know, something that I guarantee you probably none of his friends are thinking about, by giving him the opportunity to learn
Yeah, well, I just
something.
wanna I
Yeah.
think it's not only his friends aren't thinking about, I would argue that many of his friends' parents don't think about, right,
Yeah.
what he's going through or what he will go through, right, with the first month. And I'm
Yeah.
just I'm curious, maybe a 13-year-old boy only thinks about the money. Maybe that's just how we're wired at that age,
Mhm.
but he's already interacting with the public. He's already
Mhm.
having to set up rules. Uh,
Mhm.
you haven't done the bookkeeping yet, but I'm sure there'll be costs and, things that'll have to be introduced to and like, hey, you make 100, but keep 100, those kinds of things.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
I can just imagine the conversations you'll have with him, just how different they will be. I mean, as a 13-year-old, you're going to be having these conversations. So pretty cool.
Yeah. Which is something that you don't learn in school, unfortunately, but it's gonna you know, he's gonna come away from this after a couple years and be able to apply what he learned in multiple different businesses or understand what people are talking about when they're talking about stuff.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
I've even had friends who they'll talk about, well, what if I could sell this product? And then it's like, I already know. It's like, well, what's your cost to doing business? And they're like, well, these supplies are this much. And I'm like, okay, well, what about your building and your employees and your this and your insurance and you know, they don't think about that. And then it's like, okay, you set your price for something and they learned it eventually, but I don't want to burst anyone's bubble, but unless they ask for my advice, I try
Yeah.
not to willingly just, well, hey, you're actually wrong. I don't want to
Yeah,
ever do that
yeah.
too
Oh,
much.
by the way,
But
you're gonna lose $10 a unit. What
yeah,
do you like
you
that?
set that price incorrectly because you're not even thinking of all these other costs. But
Yeah.
yeah, but I'm super excited for that. And yeah, I think too, even if that is your number one factor for money too, sometimes I've thought about this because Pace sometimes will treat stuff almost as if it were a game. I know
Mm.
that's really weird. Um, Not in like in this emotionally detached jerk way,
Uh-huh.
but more like when things get crazy, he'll be like, "This is fun,
Yeah,
don't worry.
yeah.
Like life is just a game. Like don't worry about money. We'll go make more." And so there's a kind of like when you do make money, even if that is your motivating factor, it's kind of like, "Oh, this is fun. This works."
Yeah.
Like it's the reward system to actually being aware of making money. And that's another thing too. A lot of people struggle, myself included, with feeling worthy of making money.
Mm.
And so, if someone has that where they're like, "Yes, it's all about the money." I mean, obviously, let's guide them a little bit more towards like a more human approach, but at least they
Yeah.
feel deserving and worthy of making that, and it excites them, and it
Yeah,
pushes you forward.
yeah, it does. I mean, I've worked in software sales where, what's called OTE, it stands for on target earnings or
Mhm,
multiple six figures. But what
mhm.
happens in that environment is your base is somewhere between a half and 60% of that. So
Yeah,
right when you're in management, you go, oh, you can make 250 or 300, but oh, by the way, you got to live on, something way down here.
yeah.
So I've seen, lots of people be solely motivated by money
Mhm,
because again, I've just seen it my entire career. But the ones that have the longest and most successful track record, yes,
mhm.
money in my profession, money has to be important. But to your point, we call it a scoreboard. You can call it a game if you want.
Yeah,
What you really get into, because it's just a quarterly grind and you're always on the hook to be fired in 90 days. You're just
yeah,
talking about the scoreboard because it just takes you out of that. I guess detached, like you said, is kind of the right idea, right? It's just part of the game, guys. My scoreboard's higher than his scoreboard or her
yeah.
scoreboard. And if you can detach from that, like you said, pace was, it does make it a lot more fun. Because otherwise the stress will just eat you alive from both ends and you just
Yes.
blow up.
Yeah, I was gonna say to make it a game, I think is most healthy, which Pace does, is when it's stressful.
Yeah.
That helps you kinda just be like, "Well, let's not look at, like, this big tree that's in front of me. Let's look up and look at the forest itself
Mm,
and just be like, you know what? It's just one tree.
yeah.
We're fine. We're still in a forest."
There you go.
So,
Cool.
yeah, I think it's really interesting. And, yeah, I think I don't know. I wonder if Asher will be purely motivated by money. He's also the world's least spendy person I've ever met. The guy's never spent a penny that anyone's ever given him. So
Wow.
he just like saves it all. And I'm like, "Do you like want to do anything with that?" We actually had him invest some of his money in Bitcoin like a month ago. And so he's been having a really fun time tracking the ups and downs and like
Oh,
getting
that'll
into
catch your attention.
conversations. Yeah. So he's been having fun with that, so I think maybe he's probably the only kid in his class that has you know, some Bitcoin, but
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. I got in
yeah,
November, December. So yeah,
nice.
yeah, there you go.
It's
So
been fun
yeah,
I mean, Pace and Asher will go like the daily stuff, and I'm like, "Hey, it doesn't matter, it's more of a long-term thing, just leave it alone."
leave it
And
alone.
they have fun talking about the daily ups and downs.
Very cool. Well, again, this was our Mother's Day episode. Again, I love how you started, right? Understand what they're good at, what they're like, and encourage that. So that was wonderful, Laura.
Yeah,
And again,
yeah,
happy
and don't
Mother's Day.
be
Go ahead.
Thank you. And one final thing too is don't be afraid if your kids want to do something that's different than you.
Yeah,
So if Asher decides he doesn't want to do real estate, then fine,
it's fine.
And if you're a doctor and you want a doctor child and your child is not into that, that's fine too. It just don't create the expectations and them feeling like they're going to disappoint you.
Yeah, don't
So
add friction. There's already enough.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
that is awesome, Laura. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.